Hey guys, how's it going? In this video, I'm going to show you how you can clean the leads that you get from Apollo before you import them into Instantly. So why do you need to watch this video? Well, every time you scrape leads from anywhere, you're going to have to clean them. And what that means is, of course, you have to qualify them, but that's like a later step. But before qualifying them, you actually need to clean them out. And what I mean by that is you have to, take care of the titles. So I just injected a few, random titles here. You have manager, that's not someone that we want to target. You have something like a co-fundator. I'm sure I'm butchering that, but that's supposed to be co-founder, and this also is supposed to be co-founder, but it's in different languages. You have different terminology like chief executive officer, all these things. So if you're going to send an email, in the email, you don't want to be saying like, "Hi, you are the chief executive officer of something something." Like if you're going to use that terminology in your email somewhere as a personalization, now that thing has to be correct, right? Because if you use the wrong thing, now if I receive the email saying, something like my company name in all caps and this is like incorporated, and you also messed up my title, there's no reason for me to reply to that email. So that's exactly why you need to clean out leads. And this is exactly what we help, a lot of B2B services companies do is, we automate their, entire lead pipelines. And, this is one of the first steps that we do in the pipeline. And it actually takes quite a long time if you're doing this manually. So it's one of those like really high ROI steps. Okay, so let's go over here. This is the automation. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to hit execute. I'm going to paste this in here and let's hit run. Okay, sweet. So it's going to start running. And what I'll do is I'll explain one by one while this is running, and we'll just pause in the middle. So what you have is you have the leads sheet over here, and this sheet corresponds to this sheet over here. And the way that we've set it up is we have our leads, and then we have the document connected to our Apollo scrape leads and the first sheet over here. And then we have no real filters applied over here. We're just getting all the leads that are inside that sheet. A good thing to do before you're doing any kind of automation that does a looping function is to just have a limit so that you're limiting the number of runs you're having, so that you can stop, or at least the automation will stop after 5 runs, 10 runs, whatever it is, so that you can fix things and test out different things without having to go through the entire whatever 588 items that we have over here. So what we have now is we're going over each of the rows that are inside our Excel sheet. And the reason why I like to use the loop over items is because it's much easier to understand. And I know that it's easy enough to, just go from here directly to here and you'll have 20 executions. But sometimes you have inner loops that you might want to set using this. Sometimes, you just want to be able to see this easily. So that is why I prefer using a loop over items. We have a batch size of 1 for this. Now let me just pause this. Okay, so let me go inside the first one of the LLM calls we're doing. So the first one of these, the most important, is to fix the designation. And let me just show you what we're doing here. So we have given it a role of data cleaning assistant, and here is the task. So we're also doing a little bit of qualification, not necessarily because Apollo is already giving us a lot of these leads that are executives, but sometimes Apollo, what it does is it will give you things like um, executive to the CEO, something like that. And it reminds me of Dunder Mifflin, where it's assistant to the regional manager. So it's not actually regional manager or assistant regional manager. It's like assistant to the CEO. So all of those need to be cleaned out, right? Because that's not an actual C-suite role. And what we do is, we just give that inside the rules. And if the title does not match any of the roles that we have defined over here, we're just going to output a 0. And then later we'll have a if statement that is going to help us get rid of all of the zeros, or all of the ones that we don't want to send an email to. The other things that we need to do is, like, make sure that we're doing like translations, as we said, in German or French. We don't want to be keeping it, in that language. We want to be keeping it in English. And let's see. So same thing, um, sometimes you have multiple roles that are mentioned, so we want to maintain it in seniority. If they are CEO and founder, we're just going to say CEO. If they are both founder and co-founder for some reason, we're just going to say they're co-founder, so on and so on. Okay. So the input is going to be the title. Now, where is the title coming from? It's coming from this loop over items, and it is coming from this sheet, this row right here. Okay, so let's go back. All right, so let's look at the output. So here we have the output CEO. But if I go all the way back up to the top, you have the output as 0. And the reason there is because the title is a manager. So this one should be 0. These should be fine. They should have been converted to, I think, co-founder. That's my guess. So if I go over to number 2, co-founder. Okay, co-founder. So both of those have been translated correctly. I know sometimes you might get them in Chinese as well, so like impossible for you to make out unless you know Chinese. So it's really useful to use an LLM here. It is possible to do it using a code node. Now, it's something that I've done in the past, but the thing is, like, you have to come up with these rules yourself. So, maybe you want to get rid of all these gmail.com, yahoo.com. You only want to keep the ones which are actually company emails. And in the titles, you might have some titles you want to keep, but it's just annoying. It's just work. And although I did vibe code a decent bit of this section using Claude, but the thing is, like, it's it's not dynamic enough. And this is the type of problem where it's actually fine for you to go a little bit more dynamic, where it's not really necessary that the answer is super deterministic. It's okay if the LLM has a little bit of wiggle room, because then it will help you do things like sometimes people will say chef executive. So in order to fix that, then your automation might break, or your filtering over here might break, but the LLM might get it right because it understands that what you're trying to say is CEO, right? So that kind of stuff is why we use a LLM. And even though I've set the LLM as GPT-5, you can actually keep it as 4.1 mini. It should be able to do this task very easily. It's super easy, super straightforward type of task. So it's actually possible, and probably best in terms of using the amount of tokens to use something like that. Okay, so let's go over to the next one. Here we have the company names. So in the company names, we've got the following prompt. So it says you are a company name normalizer. Okay, so this is the input you're going to get. Now, one of the things with company names is, like, if I get my company name in all caps, it's actually okay, because AI Solve, it's a small enough company name where, like, I'll forgive it. But if it's like a longer company name, I don't know, I can't think of let's say like Louis Vuitton or something like that, right? If I get like one of those multi-syllable company names, like more than 5 characters, 6 characters, and I am the owner of the company, and I get an email with all caps with that and like an incorporated LLC at the end, I'm not responding to that email. So to avoid that from happening, these are the rules that we have. We have, preserve capitalization, okay, remove the legal entity suffixes, so like Inc., LLC, so on and so on, and then standard stuff, don't add any explanations, so on and so on. And the interesting thing here is actually that what we're doing is we are trying to refer to it as the company refers to itself on its website, LinkedIn, or branding, because sometimes even if you do this thing, you can try and like end up being too clever, and sometimes it does make sense for them to capitalize their name. So it's a little gray area, and in that case, it's just better to rely on the company itself because they know their name. They're the ones who are calling themselves that on their name, on their website, and so on. So instead of using ChatGPT or using any of the other LLMs, in this case, what we do is we use Perplexity Sonar Pro and we use OpenRouter. So the reason for using OpenRouter here is that one thing you'll realize is if you have a lot of different LLM calls, right, you end up running out of tokens from all these different LLMs that you have: Gemini, OpenAI, Perplexity, or Claude. You start running out of tokens, and then you need to have a dashboard to track tokens. All this stuff. It's just much easier if you use OpenRouter, where you can just have all of the different types of APIs all coming through a single gateway, and OpenRouter handles that really well. So that's why we use OpenRouter for doing that. And here we're using Perplexity Sonar Pro because it will go and actually look at their website, their branding, LinkedIn, whatever it is, to find the exact terminology that they're using. Okay, so let me go over here, and what we're doing here is we're just, doing a quick manual mapping of their name, their designation, company, so on and so on. Okay, then we're updating the leads. So here we have our output sheet, and then this is the sheet, sorry, output spreadsheet, and then this is the exact sheet in which we're doing the update. So if I go over here, let's go and see the outputs. Okay, so here we have the outputs: co-founder, co-founder, CEO, 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 CEO. Okay, and if you remember inside here, we had said manager, co-fundator, Mitbegründer. I'm definitely not getting that right, but it has corrected it to co-founder, since if we're sending emails in English, then that would be what we want to address them as. Then we've got the org names. Okay. All right. So let's go back and let me just see if we were able to get any of these if statements to execute. So I'm just going to show you that as well. Okay. There we go. Actually, yeah, it was the very first one, yeah, because we had the manager over here, so that's why that one went back without submitting it to the new sheet. So essentially what it did was it skipped over the step of checking the company name and then adding it to the sheet because it failed the first test, which is the designation. I also usually keep something like this in all of my automations, give it like a 1 second, 2 second wait. And that is just to make it so that the API doesn't get overloaded, because if you send request after request after request after request, sometimes you start hitting their thresholds and you get rate limited, and that just messes with your automation unnecessarily. And you have to go back and restart, so on and so on. Just much easier, less headache if you give a wait node 1 second, 2 second, it's probably fine. Even if you're doing like 600 leads, this is probably going to take you like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. So yeah, not too bad. But yeah, thank you so much for staying for this video. I would really appreciate a like or subscribe. And if you want this exact automation, I think I've given some descriptions or some details in the description, so you can do that. And if you want us to install something like this for your agency, for your business, then feel free to reach out. I've left a consulting link or an appointment link below in the description as well. But yeah, thank you so much. Enjoy your day. Have a blessed day ahead.